specifically?
The origin story, if you will.
The origin canine story, yes. That's actually why it's called Origin, because
Excellent.
it's like Australia, bring the industry back to Australia, plus my origin story. So
Gold. Awesome.
there you go.
Mate, born and bred Queensland, so born in Mackay, up in more northern Queensland. Loved my time up there. My parents did actually get divorced when I was about 5 years old, so I did have that, and eventually, as a part of my life, and eventually I did end up going to live with my mum, who had moved down to Griffith in New South Wales. So essentially, I did all of my primary school years up in Mackay and Moranbah. My dad was a boilermaker, so he moved out to Moranbah and was working at the council there. So not actually in the mines, which Moranbah was more known for, but working at the council there as a boilermaker. And growing up in that sort of environment, more of a country environment than anything else, I think that really set me up for a lot of resilience. We, for a long period of time as well, didn't even have a TV, which wasn't an issue. It never crossed my mind that to be an issue, because all it meant was that I was outside playing in the dirt, playing with cars, playing with army, the old in the backyard with the sticks and the rocks as grenades and things like that. So, and it was awesome, out with your friends, riding your bikes, getting around, just basically no shoes on, playing in the dirt, sort of stuff. Which was great. I loved it because I didn't know anything else. But getting closer to the end of my primary school years, I thought I might like to go and live with mum for a while. I wasn't having any issues at home or anything like that. It was just a decision that I thought, you know what, I might go and live with mum for a bit. So that was the reason I then moved down to Griffith in New South Wales, and essentially just did all my high school years there. And I was a very early recruit into the ADF, into the Army, so I only spent about a year or two after I finished high school before I joined.
Yeah. So that's interesting. You mentioned, like, you reckon you probably got a bit of resilience and whatnot from, living out in the bush and that type of stuff. I've kind of found that the toughest kind of dudes that I knew in the Army, in life in general, have those sort of upbringings. And I think, and I'm comparing this to my childhood. I had a really, really, like, easy, I'd say, childhood. Like, I grew up in the eastern beaches of Sydney.
Yeah.
And I kind of wonder sometimes if later on in life, when I had, mental health struggles, if having a really easy childhood maybe contributed to that. I don't know. And then all my resilience that I built up was like from an adult.
Yeah.
So, yeah, anyway, it's just interesting that you say that.
That is something that I talk about as well with other friends, with my friends and with my wife, in terms of resilience and how people are brought up and how they deal with things and essentially what makes the person. I agree in part. Like, if you have everything too easy or very easy and handed to you on a plate, then you don't have that resilience growing up as a child. Things that potentially shouldn't really matter so much might weigh a lot more heavily on some people if they've not been exposed to some adversity in the past, for example. That's not to say that those people will never get PTSD. I was diagnosed with PTSD in the last 2 years or so, and that was basically from a lot of what I did overseas, though, not from growing up. But I think that potentially I handled things a lot better during those times until it did start weighing on me. But yeah, I do think that is in part for general lifestyle, a little bit of adversity and hardship. Not that we're going to be comparing stories with our grandparents bloody walking 5Ks to school in snow and shit like that. But yeah, a little bit of hardship and adversity definitely goes a long way in building resilience.
Yeah. No, that's really interesting, man. Yeah, because like I said, there's a bunch of other guys I know who've had really similar upbringings, and they're just the toughest dudes that I know. Like Mick from... do you listen to Zero Limits?
No, I
Morris?
was looking at it just the other day, though, so I'll start listening to some of those.
Yes, there's an episode on there, a guy called Mick. He just has his first name. He's one of those sort of guys, real country, bush sort of guy, as well as Jason Semple. I think he was... So they were like either side of my episode on that show. So what about school, man? Because another sort of big theme is that people who go to the military and have work in these austere sort of conditions later in life didn't do too well in school.
I'm probably a little bit of an outlier there then. I was in some subjects, maths, science, woodwork, so things with my hands and all that sort of analytical stuff, I excelled at. I was in the top classes for maths and sciences and woodwork and things like that. English, though, I hated writing. I hated having to come up with stories because I'm just, and it's now in my life as well, I'm just more factual, less, I don't know what the word would be, less artistic or less creative, I guess, in that aspect. And that was primary school. Going into high school in the early years, I was much the same. However, that did start to wane a bit. I got a little bit distracted with work. And I enjoyed making money, and I enjoyed having the money.
Say girls?
No, I was a shy lad. I started working at KFC, of all places, as most youngsters do. Even in Griffith was a fairly rural sort of town as well. I probably worked a little bit too much and didn't focus on school and studies as much as what I should. So grades started to slip a little bit there, but. And a little bit of boredom with what school was providing as well at that time, I guess.
Yeah, I think that's kind of what I'm referring to. Is like most of the guys that I know are quite intelligent guys who are very, very capable, but don't apply themselves because they have other interests. So you're into the sciences, for example. I was into the humanities, the history, the English, that type of stuff.
Yep.
So, but I think for me, that's what drew me to the military, was that history sort of side.
Okay. Yeah.
Maybe that's why you ended up. Maybe I'm just speculating in like the EDD sort of world, because you're a very, probably quite a meticulous, process-driven, steady sort of guy, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I actually I have a vague recollection that a army recruiter came around to high school. I'd always loved dogs, loved everything about dogs. I had dogs at home for most of my life. And then I think it was an army recruiter came around to school, and I found out that they actually had dogs in the ADF, in the army. And from then, and that was probably when I was about, I want to say about 16 and a half, maybe 17 or something like that, that really kicked off my want or desire to go into the army and become a dog handler. I had severe acne at the time, so I got knocked back on my application. So I had to spend a couple of years on Roaccutane, just getting the pimples and zits and stuff under control. Once I did that, though, I was straight in at about 19. Yeah. Yeah.
I keep drawing this back to me because I only got my experience to compare it to, but I was the same, man. I had probably wasn't that bad when I was a kid. It just made me really self-conscious, but I had a bit of acne when I was a kid, and I got on the Roaccutane for a while, and I think when I joined in 2007, I had to get off it because I couldn't be on that medication. So that's interesting that you mentioned that, hey?
Yeah, a lot of similarities.
I didn't know that would have precluded you from joining.
It was fairly severe acne. It was cystic acne, so quite big lumps and open wounds and things like that. So
scarring and that sort of stuff.
So I guess it would prevent me from going out field properly, getting dirty, stuff like that. Maybe that was the problem. I was in the dirt too much.
Were you self-conscious about that, or
fairly? Yeah. Which is why I was fairly quiet as an older kid. Had a little bit of too much energy as a youngster. Probably some elements of ADHD or hyperactive. Bloody young fella, give me some red cordial and I'm off to the races.
See ya.
Yeah, that's it.
Cool, man. And were you sort of looking for girls at that stage? Or you just too shy? It wasn't quite your thing yet?
Probably too shy, to be honest, during high school. Self-image is something that will limit you if you have a poor self-image of yourself, which I did. I was a bit cute, but I'm not modest either, mate. Not now, anyway. But yeah, no, I looked all right, but the pimples and the acne put a pretty big dampener on my self-confidence. Yeah. In saying that, though, with work at KFC, I was only there for a very short period before I became a shift manager. So I had the confidence to do that. But yeah, going out and chatting up girls, that wasn't my forte.
Yeah, but I mean, and that's why I'm sort of honing in on this one particular detail, because as a young teenager, the pimply kid working at KFC to the dude I see in front of me today, multiple deployments with special operations, dog handler, highly successful in the business world. You seem like a pretty well-adjusted sort of guy. So it's just, I find it interesting to see how far people can go and the sort of changes they can make, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. It's I can't remember the number, but I think it's something like people will have 5 different careers in their lives over their lifetime, and it's like childhood is one thing, young adulthood is another thing before you get into those careers, and what you are as a kid or as a young adult can be extremely different from what you become in life. And for me, going into the Defence Force and the training and the moulding that they had for me, probably, and I will say that it very highly likely did have a very large impact on how I turned out as an adult. And even then, though, over the last 30 or 40 years or whatever, since being a young fella, I've changed over time as well. I can recognise different periods in my life where I wasn't as good a human or person as I could have been. Growing up and learning new things all the time, deploying overseas certainly transitioned me into a new stage of life as well. So yeah, there's what's within you as well as all the external effects as well.
Yeah, that's
influences.
Man.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what year did you join the army?
Joined in 95.
Okay.
As a 19-year-old.
Shit.
Yeah. So it's interesting joining the army at 95. When I went through recruiting, like I said, I want to be a dog handler. So I went in with the intention of doing that. They said, yep, no worries. When you get there, just tell them you want to be an engineer. So like we go in 95 and for however many years after that, you never actually had your allocated corps or job or role or whatever. It's get there, do some training, and then they'll give you a piece of paper and you write your top 3 corps down. So being the bloody smart ass that I was, I wrote RAE for Royal Australian Engineers to become a dog handler.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I didn't get RAE.
Oh, really? Oh, okay. I thought you were like, bam, straight into it.
Unfortunately not.
Okay.
No, they... I probably wasn't as much of the grey man as I tried to be, but they said we need a couple of smarter guys to be missile numbers in bloody artillery. So shooting off Rapier and RBS-70 missiles. So, yeah, we had maybe 10 or 12 go to infantry, a few go to ordnance and things like that. And then, yeah, a few engineers, and they wanted a couple of smart cookies or smarter cookies. Well, that's what they said anyway. It made me feel good. And said, no, I want to be a dog handler. I want to go to engineers and become a doggy. I said, no. We need you to be a missile number off to artillery. If you don't like it after a year or so, put your corps transfer in. All right, off we go. So, yeah, off I went to, North Head in Manly. Bloody amazing. You probably...
Oh, yeah, great spot. Yeah, 100%.
Great spot there to do my IET training for air defence for, 3 months? Yeah.
And what was the unit called?
When I got after my training?
Yeah.
16 Air Defence Regiment down in Adelaide.
Okay, that's the one I thought it was, and that's those missiles on the little tripod thing. And
yep,
yeah, cool, interesting.
So got down there, did about a year, was ready to put my corps transfer in, and then got interested in motorbikes and got some cars. Crashed a motorbike, broke my leg.
Really? Like how bad a break?
Spiral fracture in tib and fib.
Yep.
So both tib and fib, the 2 bones in the lower part of your leg, basically twisted and came apart. Both of them came apart, and big spiral fractures through them. So had to go to hospital and get a 18-inch steel rod inserted into one of them. So that slowed me down for another 12 months. Came good, and finally got my corps transfer to engineers about 2 years or so after joining.
Awesome. And then so from 16 air defence to engineers, is that just like you're a minesweeper to start, or you went into doggies?
Essentially, yeah. Before becoming a dog handler, you had to do your time as a normal combat engineer. So, learning how to do mine detection with the mine labs or metal detectors. What else we do? Bridges, road construction, cutting timber. a little bit of hand tools, like all the basic hand tools and things like that. So that was really good. I enjoyed all of that stuff, and I knew that I was still working towards becoming a doggy, so I enjoyed doing all that. What else? CBR&D, so chemical, biological, radiological, nuclear detection, and all that sort of decontamination stuff as well. And that all, the engineers is a very broad range of skills. Doggies is a specialist skill within there, and it took me another 2 years of being a combat engineer before I finally got the doggies course.
Okay.
Yeah.
So 4 years total military, then you got into the doggies.
Yeah. Yeah.
So what differentiates a combat engineer from a regular engineer?
Regular engineer in that sense, as opposed to a combat engineer, would be probably an officer, where they've actually gone to do their degrees in different engineering skills.
Gotcha.
Electrical engineer, mechanical engineer.
Yep.
Whereas a combat engineer is the soldiers, and they just learn all those other skills, hands-on sort of stuff.
Yeah, cool. Any deployments in that so from 95 to 99, any deployments in that time?
Not before then. That was all just back in Oz. And for my last year as a combat engineer as well, I was actually the CO's driver. But we were at I was in a mechanised squadron, or troop, I should say. And I had to learn how to drive an APC. And then down at Pucker at the School of Armour.
Yep.
So we went down there and did their full APC IT course, which was fun as well. I bloody enjoyed doing all these things, like driving APCs around in the mud, getting them bogged, getting them out of the bog, and seeing the other guys roll in labs and accidentally and stuff. I did that. Back to the unit in Sydney. It wasn't one CER. I think it was one FER. It was what one CER was before it moved to Darwin. I was 3 troop there, the mechanised troop. So, I became the CO's driver of his APC and of his Commodore. And then basically finished that. He said, all right, you've done all right for the year. What do you want to do? I said, I want to be a doggy. So that's essentially how I got my dog handlers course, because there was only 12 dog handlers in the Army at that time. And it was an extremely tightly held positions, and it was extremely hard to get on courses.
Yeah.
That was 99. We moved Darwin, we moved one FER, or 2 and 3 troop, up to Darwin at that time, became one CR up there. I did deploy to East Timor in 99, so I essentially drove all the way up to Darwin, helped move the unit up there, and then within about a week of being there, said, hey, we're deploying to East Timor, 99. So straight over there, APC driver again.
Was that Interfet?
That was Interfet, yeah.
Interfet, yeah.
One of the first one for
You
us
weren't the guy driving the lav that reversed in those infantry guys?
No.
That video where they're like, oh,
I've seen that, yeah. Oh, you fuckhead. Yeah. No, not me. But similar sort of scene. I would have been on the ground at that time, because when we rocked up, and this was probably my introduction to fear, my fear for my own life sort of thing, where we were, it took bloody 2 weeks to get there as well. We had the APCs on these Singaporean transport ships or whatever they were, and rolling off of those onto the beaches and seeing the Indonesians setting up gun bloody posts and pointing their machine guns at us. So, we popped down under the hatch, threw my bloody helmet back on and popped up again. Yeah. And we just didn't know. We didn't know how bad it was going to be, if it was going to be bad. We'd heard the stories about what they were doing to the East Timorese there, and it sounded pretty atrocious. And then to be rolling up the beaches on our APCs and them setting up gun positions, and it was pretty scary. Nothing happened there, which was good. But when we first rolled in there, everything was still on fire. There was cars all over the road still burning. So some of our first tasks were to clear paths around the roads, so moving vehicles out of the way and things like that. That was sort of my introduction to war, I guess. It was a warlike deployment, nothing significant compared to, obviously,
to later on.
But that was my intro.
Okay. So just briefly describe the situation in East Timor, because I didn't join till 2007, and it was like, there was a couple of residual trips going on then, and I never went there.
Yep.
What was the situation like in 1999, particularly because I didn't realise that there were still Indonesians like right there on the beach when you were pulling up, and they were still armed, and what was sort of going on? Like, what were the briefs you guys were getting?
Mate, that was a long time ago. Can't really remember the briefs or anything like that, but we were part of the Ready Reaction Force as well. So if the infantry and their APCs and LAVs got any intel that there was bad guys somewhere, then we'd all race out and we'd support them, and we'd go and look for them and chase them down, sort of thing. But that only really lasted for a reasonably short period for us. And then after that, we basically started a bit of a reconstruction force or operation, I guess, where we were fixing roads, fixing and building bridges, which essentially was part of our ability to get out further from just not Tarankout, bloody getting a little bit ahead of myself. Dili, getting out on the roads. So driving these 13-ton APCs up and down the Dili hills, which were barely as wide as the tracks. And then, rolling around, building non-equipment bridges out of whatever materials we could find. Other guys were building the Bailey bridges. Like, we'd been training on these Bailey bridges for years and years and years, and then getting to bloody build these things was pretty cool as well. Chopping down trees for timber and making our own wood for building stuff was pretty cool.
That's so good, man. Yeah. I mean, even though you may not have been the epic firefights you thought it was going to be, and, mass graves and whatever else you would have maybe thought it was going to be.
Yeah.
You still got to do some cool stuff, man.
Yeah, all of the things that we'd been training for, all of our basic engineer skills were definitely put to use. Yeah.
Yeah, awesome, man. So you wrap. Let's just say, anything in particular happened in Timor that was...
No, just that most significant thing for me was really just rocking up on the beach and having guns pointed at us.
Yeah. Okay,
not knowing... Is this shit going down here?
Yeah,
is this 50 and 30 cal just up to my right here, about to arc up, or what's going on?
And I don't know if this is even in your head, but didn't Saving Private Ryan come out like in 1998? So,
not sure.
I guess it wouldn't have stuck in your head. Maybe you didn't care. I thought, shit, if Saving Private Ryan had just come out, this big beach scene, then you're rocking up into Timor, these machine guns going, oh, fuck.
No, I can't remember,
So so let's say you get back from Timor, adjustment fine, getting back from Timor, no drama?
Coming back from Timor, I went straight onto my dog handler's course.
Awesome.
So I came home a little bit early. I think I came back in late February or March of 2000. Straight onto the dog handler's course, so within a week I was straight into it. So for me, I was busy straight away. So just trying to think. There probably was an adjustment period. There probably was a little bit of angst at home as well, because being away from home for even 2 months, 3 months, the people left at home get into their own routines and their own life, and then here's this person coming back in expecting everything to be exactly as they left it 3, 5, 6 months ago, where it's not. It's very different. They've got their own routine now, and here's this other person coming in trying to go back to how it was. It does take a little while, so there was a little bit of angst there. But as well, I did go straight on to the handler's course, the dog handler's course, which was a 19-week course, and I was super busy with that as well, so my focus was on that as opposed to what had just been my previous deployment.
Yeah, okay.
Which, to be honest, was fairly benign overall.
Yeah, but I mean, still exciting for your first deployment overseas.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep.
So it's from 2000 when you got back. Was it like? Well, I guess we're going to get to it, but was it just a blur after that, like trip, or were there long periods of inactivity where you were sort of had a bit of a break and got to focus on other things?
When I look back at when I was going through it, it didn't feel too busy or as though things were too much was going on. But looking back at it, there was a fairly constant tempo of operations, deployments. Whether they were in Oz or overseas, because as soon as I did my dog handler's course, we were rolling into the 2000 games. Was it Olympic Games? for 2000. So, and that was then with IRU, Incident Response Unit. So that was raised to support the Olympic Games, and so deploy, home, dog handlers course, and then straight into our operations for the games. So that was fairly constant, very, very constant, busy tempo. And then essentially as soon as that finished, towards the end of 2000, then I was just back up to Darwin. Finally, like a year and a half later after getting posted up there. And Darwin was pretty good. We just got to do a lot of dog training, which is what I needed to do. I'd only just finished the dog handlers course, and to be honest, after 19 weeks, you've got all the skills and you've got all the knowledge and a lot of the skills, the base skills, but it does take at least another 12 months or so, 6 to 12 months or so of continuation training to get yourself up to an even better skill level. Just because we did do the Olympic Games though as well, we got to do a whole heap of extra training. We got to see a whole heap of extra venues. So during the games, we'd go around to all the different stadiums. We'd search all of those before the events were held. We did all the accommodation for the athletes as well. Really good, interesting to see the accommodation and their halls and everything like that. So yeah, constant training. Was very, very beneficial for me, whereas most or other courses and other times people did the course and then just to a unit and not much happened. So I sort of had the benefit of that very high tempo. Darwin was good. We used to do some searches at the wharves there. If different ships were coming in, we just organised training to coincide with them coming in as well, search the docks, all that sort of stuff. And then... what else? The next deployment was Solomon Islands in 2003.
Okay.
So I got to go over there. September 11. What year was that? Was that 01?
2001, yeah.
01, yeah. So we were up in, I think it was somewhere on the sunny coast for the CHOGM meeting, Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting. And we'd been searching, once again, search all the venues, then get them locked down before all the government heads came in. And then, we're just sitting in our camp one day, and then someone said, hey, come and have a look at the TV. So we watched it live out in the field, basically, or away from home. And then, CHOGM got shut down. We all got shipped back home and put on high alert for anything that was happening there. But thankfully... it didn't spread any further than the US. It was just isolated there. But we were all shock and awe at bloody what was going on. Incredible to see that sort of coordinated attack on foreign soil, basically. But that was interesting. So we had a bunch of different activities like that. And then Solomon Islands in 2003. That was classed as a warlike deployment again, but it was very benign for us. We were just once again searching the courthouses so they could do their trials and things with the Janana Guzmao, whatever his name was.
Timor, Solis. I never tracked much of that because it was done by the time I. For me, it may as well have been Vietnam. So
funny you say that, because I'm 47 now, and I was born in 75. So, like, people being born in 2000, 99, 2000, and things like that, and then like we look at the 20s now, and what was it? My wife was saying that we consider the 80s. The same as like our parents were thinking about the 50s and 60s.
Yeah.
Thinking, holy shit.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm that old.
Mate, I think it was even a meme I saw the other day. It was like a Instagram reel, and this guy was like, apparently these kids are calling the 90s the late 1900s. He's like, fuck these kids. It's true, but it's the late 1900s. The little fuckers that were born in like...
in 2000 plus.
2003. And they'd be... Hell, I can't do maths, but like... After September 11, they're 18 now. They're out working. Probably joined the army, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But you're 100%. It's crazy. Craziness.
Yeah, it's interesting how we look at time. I think I was reading just somewhere the other day that we can only envision, and this is like looking into the future and potentially what the future is going to be like, we can really only envision twice the length of the lifetime we've already lived. So a 20-year-old can only look at another 20 years or so past where they are. Whereas myself as a 47-year-old, I can imagine another 47 years because I know what I've been through for that past 47 years. So when people are trying to, like futurists, are looking at what the technology and what our lives are going to be like in a lifetime, then young people can't see it as clearly, which is really interesting because they're all the ones that are currently mostly involved with the current lifestyle and the technology. And they're going to be doing it, but they can't really envision 50 or 60 years down the track.
Is that like a brain science thing? So you've only got, it's proportional to the life you've lived?
Yeah, exactly.
Wow. Okay.
It's interesting.
That's super cool.
Yeah.
I just keep looking at this thing every now and then, make sure
we're
it's
still going. Yep. Where was I up to? Just talking about.
I just wanted to circle back to the games quickly. The games in Chogham and whatnot. Any fines at all, or it was all pretty benign?
No fines. During the Chogham one, my dog found some shotgun rounds in a safe. Not really an operational fine, but they just used them to scare the birds away from the airfield. That was at the airport we were searching. Actually, no, that wasn't that. That was the Queen's visit in. I don't even know what year that was now. But we did a search around Cairns, I think it was, all different venues the Queen was coming to visit, and then we searched the airport as the last venue, and. I've just found some shot. The dog responded to some shoddy rounds in the safe, which I thought was pretty cool. I classed it as an operational find.
Was that your first ever operational find?
Yeah, in that sense, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, cool, man. Cool. I'm going to hone in on this just for a minute. Like, what's the feeling when you first ever find after X amount of years in the military, having been overseas and whatnot? Is it just?
It's just validation.
Yeah.
Like we in all of our training searches, we would, for the vast majority, have blind hides, so we wouldn't know where it was. We very rarely would ever train on our own for that reason.
Yep.
We would always want someone else laying our kit for us, the explosives, weapons and ammo, so that we were being trained as well as the dog being trained. That way our skills were always being built to be reading the dog's indication and not inadvertently cueing the dog onto the kit as well if we knew where it was. So we would have no idea, the dog would have no idea. But then to have that validated, even if it was just shoddy rounds in a safe, that was great validation that things were actually working.
And I guess the situation doesn't matter. The dog found it, right? Whether it was a threat or not, they found it. Yeah, cool.
That was very easy to explain away once we told them that what we'd found. So that
sweet.
was fine. But I got to after we finished searching the airport there for that Queen's visit, we just stood on the sides of the road because we were just moving ahead of the Queen as she went to the different venues. And we just stood on the side of the road. She came through afterwards and just walked past us all, and she stopped and had a very quick chat to me. And there's a picture of my dog, a little golden Labrador called Vegas, like stretching out to sniff her handbag as she's chatting to me. It's a pretty cool picture.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah.
Man,
I'll send you a copy.
Yeah, I was going to say 100%. You have to send me that photo, man. Yeah. So when the Queen passed away recently, did that mean anything special to you, or is it just like, I met her years ago?
Yeah, pretty much just brought up the memories of meeting her. Yeah, essentially.
What she like seemed okay? Seemed quite nice?
Yeah. Very prim and proper.
I guess
it was just a very much, hey. Oh, she didn't say, hey, how you going? But,
how you going?
Nice to meet you. Oh, this is your dog. Yeah, this is Vegas. And she reached out. She's probably searching for the 50 cal in a handbag or something.
Yeah, she's got her own little Derringer.
Yeah.
Like, don't fucking...
Yeah.
All right, so back to Sully's, right?
Yeah.
So we're over in Sully's and you were talking about how it was classed as warlike operations. Again, so you were talking about like searching the courthouses and whatnot.
Yeah.
I assume for some sort of election, voting.
It wasn't an election. It was the trials of the guys that they were catching.
Oh, okay.
Like the leaders of, I can't even remember now, whatever was happening there at the time, like all the murders and the stuff that they were doing.
Was Solomon Islands Ramsey?
Yeah. God, I don't even know now. that does ring a bell for some reason.
Yeah, Ramsey, SI, Solomon Islands.
Something
Yeah. We should
like
probably Google it, but I won't.
Yeah. Too lazy.
You were there, it doesn't matter. Yeah, it's all good.
No, I was searching hotels, searching the courthouses. That was about living on the airfield, at the end of the airfield, bloody aircraft taken off. Yeah, I don't really like living at the end. Can we move off to the side a bit?
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's like watching a movie and you're like, don't outrun the plane, run to your left or right. And you're like, guys, why are we at the end of the airfield?
So easy. Yeah. So we were just off the edge there, which is all right. Yeah.
Okay, cool. And then how long was that deployment?
I think that was only about 4 months or so, something like that.
Yep.
Yeah.
Awesome. Any fines in that trip?
No. That was... Didn't really expect to find anything as well. It was just more routine searches.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, just so that we could say that we had searched. There was nothing there that anyone could grab a hold of within the courthouse, for example, to use as a weapon.
Yeah, okay, awesome. All right, and then getting back from that deployment, 2003, so that was when Iraq would have kicked off too. So was there any thoughts of going to Iraq or Afghanistan at this stage?
No. We were sort of... thoughts, yes. Intent, no. There was nothing coming through the official channels to indicate that dogs would be required over there. Just trying to think back. Like I was just talking about time frames earlier. This is 20 odd years ago now.
Yeah, it is. Well, it's officially now 23 years ago. Yeah, 23.
Yeah. No, I think there was... we were always aware of it and always looking for any information that we would, but it never eventuated. Dogs just weren't required in the operations, or our dogs anyway.
And I guess as that campaign sort of evolved, maybe IEDs weren't the flavour in the early days. They definitely were later.
Yeah.
And I think particularly in Iraq, because we weren't doing too much in Iraq. I think the Perth guys were over there doing some PSD work, but I think that was about all that Australia did.
In those earlier years, yeah.
Yeah, in the early days, limited.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. All right, so let's say we're in the 2003, 4, 5 sort of period.
Yep.
Maybe. So what was happening during that time? Was it just a lot of training?
Finished the Solly Islands. So that was, I was in Darwin once a year for that as well. 2004, I was still in Darwin. 2005, I came back down to Sydney to the School of Military Engineering. So I was then instructing on the dog handlers courses. So it was that 5 years after becoming a doggy. I was a lance corporal or a corporal at the time. So I was instructing on the dog handlers course. And then 2005 and then 2006 was the Commonwealth Games. So I then posted over to IRR in support of 2 Commando. So then we went down to Melbourne, 2006. 2006, and basically, and just ran around once again, searched all the venues before they were used. We had all our combat engineers doing the hand search. Had a bunch of chocos doing rummage searches as well. And then once we'd all been through, they'd lock them down. The cops would lock them down and seal them up so that it was nice and safe for the athletes. Accommodation again, venues, and basically anything like that. From there, I sort of attached more with the commandos for a TAG East, more of a TAG East role. So we then switched into more of a counter-terrorism. We were just on standby for anything to kick off. So we're just going around, looking at all the different venues, looking at where we could land helicopters, just doing assessments, and all that sort of stuff. Yeah.
Interesting, man. So was at that time, was there like any sort of selection process to get into IRR, or was it like
essentially
one of those?
No? Okay. Basically, drink break.
We're drinking coffees and 0 beers, by the way.
Peroni Libera. Zero alcohols. It's refreshing. Yeah. Don't always have to get on the piss. The coffee had enough get up and go for me. Yeah,
mate. I'm like trying to cut back because I got enough like
you're a fiend for
anxious nerves and like an active mind as it is. So I'm trying to like not drink so much coffee. So I'm not like this all fucking day.
It is good though. I do like a good coffee. Sorry, what was the question? Go back.
What non-alcoholic beer do you drink? Nah, I forgot what the question was. Damn it.
I think we were talking about the games.
Tag. We're talking about
tag. Yeah.
technical assault group.
Entry
Yep.
into IRR.
Oh, yeah, selection.
No, there was no selection to get into IRR at that time. That's like 2006. And the IRR had been switched over from IRU a little while before that. So Incident Response Unit, everybody that they basically used there, a lot of them stayed with the unit, and it became IRR, Incident Response Regiment, and they were supporting the commandos and the SASR in all of their SOCOM elements, where dogs or searches or chemical CBRND sort of stuff is required, decontamination search. So no requirements, or there was no selection to be there. It was just the people that were there, and as it just turns out, we were training at a higher level. We had the higher level access to equipment as well, similar to like the CATs and commandos. Just by virtue of that, our fitness levels were higher than General Army for the most part. And we did end up having a couple of our own sort of fitness tests and assessments, not a selection course per se, but we would then put out on ourselves our own like CO's annual fitness test sort of thing, where it'd be basically to the same standard as a commando entry fitness test.
Yeah.
Not the selection course though, just the entry fitness test. So if we could pass that, then we were okay to would get our tick to stay at IRR.
And where did that come from? What was the, apart from, I mean, obviously by virtue of the fact that you were working with SASR and back then 4RR,
Yeah.
that I guess would have been the impetus to
Absolutely,
go, hey, let's
yeah.
up the game a bit. But
Yeah.
who sort of, where did that come from? Who went, hey guys, let's try and up the ante here? Or was it like from within the ranks?
Hard to say. I don't know if it was from the ranks or if the CO at the time, he implemented it and it became the CO's fitness test, the COFT.
Yeah.
I don't know who implemented it, but it was a great idea, because if we wanted to work side by side with 4AR and SASR, then we needed to be able to keep up with them as well. So I thought it was a great idea.
Yeah, and the reason I ask is because I think that speaks to a good culture. Someone took that off their own back, whatever the term is. Off their own back, and then went, hey, let's fucking up the ante here. You know, there's no one dictating that we should do it, but you know, we're the man in the arena, so let's do it ourselves.
Yep.
And that's what I like, man. I like doers. I like people with I like organisations with a good culture.
Yep.
Because I mean, we'll probably get to this later, like the army culture now, and even the culture in some of the police departments is, you know, probably not the best, and then that then affects morale. And
yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, no, I think that's really cool. That's why I honed in that point.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yes, well, that takes us to 06.
Yep.
The games, the Commonwealth Games, finished that back home. So then I was back in Sydney at IRR, posted IRR. And then essentially 07 was just rolling in and out of TAG East for I think we did like 6 months at a time, something like that. Either supporting TAG or just doing general training. 07, that was 07. And then also, actually it was TAG East for the first half of 07, and then just general training. Correction. 07 I deployed. So, there's that tempo that you were talking about earlier. So, straight out of...
these deployments, they sneak up on you.
Yeah, straight out of Commonwealth Games. And then I was released from IRR, SOCOM, to Forces or Land Command, I can't remember what it was called then, to go and deploy on RDF 2, Reconstruction Force 2, with Army. So that was sort of based that in Brisbane. They got a bunch of people from different units, so a bit of a joined effort from a bunch of different units, became RTF2, and that was my 2007 deployment to Afghanistan.
And what infantry unit was that? Was that 1RAR?
I want to say 6. I'm not sure.
Yeah, okay.
Could Google it.
Could.
Don't have time.
Could, but we're in my shed, we're in my
Oh,
warehouse, my dungeon warehouse with no reception.
Bad
so.
Wi-Fi, bad visual.
Yeah, mate, I've got to do something about that. It's pissing me off. But anyway,
Yeah.
okay, yeah. So
Can't remember
RTF
exactly.
2, man, and that if this is the trip that I'm thinking of, it was. I think RTF 1 was relatively uneventful, and then RTF 2 was. I think the tallies sort of worked out that we were different. This is just from other podcasts that I've heard, and mates who were on that trip, they started to work out that we were a bit different to, say, the Dutch, for example, the Americans.
Yep. Oh, the Dutch were pretty cool with their bloody mohawks and beards and everything. That was hilarious.
Tanning on top of the
the connexes and everything.
Connexes,
So RDF 1 was largely setting up the base in TK, Turnkout, and then I think at the end they did get out to do a couple of patrols, but then RDF 2, essentially everything had been set up for the most part within the base, and then we were able to start getting out and doing our operations. Just by the name of it as well, Reconstruction Task Force, that was what we were there for. We were there to reconstruct. As far as we were concerned, just us being there, well, maybe not, it was sort of perceived by myself that way anyway, that because we were doing reconstruction, that the Taliban, just by our presence there, had moved away. This became very apparent very quickly that was not the case. So we were out there, we were fixing up wells, we were fixing up taps and things, building schools, and then we'd do that with all the heavy machinery, like with all our plant operators and chippies and plumbers and everything. We'd take them out. We'd do a bit of searching to get there along the roads, and then we'd leave, and then it'd all get destroyed the next day. And then, we started getting into a few little long-distance gunfights sort of things, take a few rounds, put a few back at them, and that'd be the end of those sort of contacts. And, I think very soon after that, it became more of a security operation as opposed to a reconstruction operation, and then we started building checkpoints and police stations, fortifying the police stations and things like that, so to enhance their security, so they could actually go and supposedly go and do their job of putting the Taliban down, I guess.
Yeah, who would have thought you need a bit of security before you start building in infrastructure? And
crazy,
just,
right?
Getting shot at every day. Yeah, okay. So, with any particular contacts or incidents or anything during that trip that stand out to you?
RDF 2, for me, for the most part, not so much. It was just some long-range exchange of gunfire, nothing too significant in that aspect. Unfortunately, we did lose one of our dogs on that trip. It was one of the dogs that was supporting the SAS over at Camp Russell. They'd been out on a patrol. I think it was like a multi-day patrol, maybe 4 or 5 days, and they were coming back through. I can't remember the exact area, but it was fairly channeled terrain, so there was only basically the road in between a whole bunch of mountains and things. And unfortunately, the dog set off an IED, or the Taliban set off an IED when the dog was over it. Unsure exactly what happened. The dog died, and the dog handler was fairly severely injured as well. He got blown back from the blast. I had to actually jump on a Chinook and head out there and join that patrol to be their doggy to bring them back home.
Oh, shit.
That was pretty tough to see, jump off a Chinook as the other handler with blood coming out of his ears, patched up, going back onto the chopper without his dog. The dog was vaporised, basically.
Yeah.
So, there's nothing left there. So, that was fairly significant. And then, getting those boys back home, and then meeting back up with the handler and just seeing his grief was quite substantial.
Yeah, 100%. And I guess it sounds like that would have set the tone for the subsequent years after that, and multiple more deployments.
Yeah, absolutely. Even the earlier times, movement was quite a lot easier, like RDF1 and the earlier SOTG, Special Operation Task Group rotations, movement through the area was quite a lot easier until they started working out that we travel on roads, fairly soft-skinned vehicles with the RPVs and the Land Rovers and things, short-range patrol vehicles. So they started laying the IEDs on the roads. But that took a couple of years and that sort of like that one in 2007 with that dog getting blown up there was sort of like a big change in our training as well. Interesting sort of way that we used to train our dogs used to be based on a UK SOP where we would be searching verges. So not actually on the road, but on the verges on the sides of the roads, because that is where the IRA was laying devices to in that sort of warfare. That was how we trained. Run up the left verge, cross over the road, run back down the right verge, searching for the explosives. Very, very quickly early on in the piece, we then discovered that we actually needed the dogs to search on the road, which is where the explosives were laid.
And what's with the British SOP? Was that because they had like EFP or like directional sort of explosives that were aimed at the road, or was it? Do you know why that was?
I don't even actually know. I do know that there was some EFPs in that, and they bloody started using EFPs in Afghanistan as well, unfortunately.
Yep.
Explosive formed projectile. So for the listeners that don't know, it's basically an explosive device that has a cone-shaped piece of metal. It can be various different types of metal, and then when it explodes, the piece of metal basically inverts into a slug of hot molten metal, which then shoots into like armoured vehicles, destroys soft-skinned vehicles and can penetrate armoured vehicles. So yeah, they started using those again later on as well. So search on the road, search off the road, search fucking everywhere basically.
Yeah.
Eventually.
Man, lucky they didn't have drones back then as well.
Oh, mate. yeah. I'm glad I'd missed out on that bloody aspect of modern warfare.
Yeah.
Nuts. That deployment 07, unfortunately, we lost one of our dogs on RDF2 as well. One of the other handlers had been out and just searched. It's so hot over there as well. It's bloody gets stupid hot, like 55 degrees in summer. Low humidity in those times, unless you're down near the water. I mean, it's just stupid humidity. But yeah, he'd been doing quite a lot of searching with his dog. They were then sitting in the shade behind the back of one of the vehicles, one of the armoured vehicles. I'm not sure if it was I think it was an LRPV. No, not an LRPV. A LAV, I think. The driver didn't know that the dog and the handler was sitting behind the vehicle, basically in the wheel track, and started reversing. The handler was able to jump up, but unfortunately the dog wasn't quick enough, so that dog unfortunately was run over. So yeah, we lost another dog there as well.
Jesus. And I bet the bloody driver was pretty distraught.
Driver
too.
and dog handler obviously both blame themselves massively, and it's
I shouldn't have been behind the wheel arch. I should have checked the wheel arch. Yeah.
So lessons learnt.
Yeah.
There's proper full checks done after that before any vehicles moved, and it's an evolution though. We actually had a burial service at the kennels in TK for that handler. We had the chaplain come down and do a ceremony for us. So good little bit of closure. The dog was actually buried there, but quite a few years later, we actually had him exhumed and brought back home.
Okay.
So that was a good bit of closure for the handler.
Was that like toward the end of the campaign? So you didn't want him to stay there. You wanted to bring him back to Australian soil, or
maybe not towards the end, but maybe a few years later. Like that. Yeah.
Okay. And you guys would have lost Trooper Pierce on that deployment as well, if I'm not mistaken, RTF2? In the lab?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, around that time.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, right. Okay. All right. So it sounds like a more significant trip than I initially sort of thought. I didn't realise you guys had lost 2 dogs.
That's sort of something that, like, I thought of that one as a fairly benign trip as well, but when we do talk it out, I do realise it was actually a fair bit of substantial stuff going on. Less gunfights and battles, but still a lot of different things happening, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I'm kind of the same with my deployments. Like I think about them as really benign, and I'm just like, fuck, nothing happened, and there was always bigger, better trips, and someone else did more, and then I talk about it, and I think about it, and I'm like, there's some
quite significant.
Some pretty interesting things happened, man. That sort of impacted me in various different ways. So, yeah. Alrighty, man. So RTF trip wraps up, and then you're back home. So that was probably maybe your first exposure to proper combat gunfire, albeit as benign compared to later on. What was that like getting home from?
Once again, we're talking about that tempo. That was I think it was about an 8-month deployment, something like that. Got to have Rockall in between, so I went home shortly. Unfortunately, my fiance at the time sent me a Dear John while I was overseas.
Hey.
So, she decided that the
name's not even John, too. That's no good.
So the military life wasn't for her, so she decided to break up and leave while I was overseas. So that was quite difficult. Jesus. So coming home, there was no other people for me to disturb, basically, in terms of coming back home. And then I essentially just straight back into pre-deployment training because I was deploying again in 2008.
Okay.
So talking about that high tempo, remember when I was saying that when I joined dogs, there was only about 12 dog handlers in the Army. We'd only built up to, I want to say about 26 or so when Afghanistan kicked off. So still not an awful lot of dog handlers within SOCOM especially to maintain those deployments. So we were very, very much back-to-back. The land forces guys were doing much slower rotations through their Army rotations. So back in late 2007, pre-deployment training for about 6 months, and then back over again in 2008 with SOTG this time.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Was that the Delta Company rotation?
I was supporting the SASR on that one,
gotcha.
so can't really remember which four. When did they become 2 Commando?
2009.
So they were still 4 RAR at that time. Can't remember what company that was.
Okay.
Yeah, but we had 2 dogs looking after the commandos and myself looking after the SAS.
So just you for Perth?
Yep.
Okay. Why just one?
Just
smaller numbers? Or?
Yeah, smaller numbers. With 4RA, they had the different companies. So different troops. No. One company, all the different platoons. So the platoons would act independently sometimes, so we'd have more dogs to be able to give to those, whereas the SASR would just have their troop, so we'd have a smaller contingent looking after those guys.
Gotcha.
Yeah. But got to do some pre-deployment training over in Perth with the guys over there, which was fantastic. Good to go and work with them, get upskilled a little bit. Like we were doing a lot at IRR, but nowhere near the level that like 4RA and the Cats were doing. So it was good to go and do some additional training, work out how we would work in with them and how all that was going. So that was probably about 3 or 4 weeks. I think I went over to Perth before that as well. So tempo was high.
Yeah. And you're obviously impressed by Special Forces.
Yeah.
Cool, man.
Yeah.
Any notable characters over there? Like, did you get to work with like your Ben Robert Smiths, your
After getting blown up a few times and concussions, my memory for names is very poor.
Yeah, okay.
I can't, and sort of timelines do get a little bit jumbled for me, so I can't remember if I was doing a little bit of work with Horse over there at that time.
Yep.
Or if it was one of the other handlers.
I'm going to start aggressively chasing that guy. I want him on this podcast, man.
Yeah. I just can't remember the section commanders' names all that clearly as well from those trips.
Yeah,
But,
okay.
Yeah, their names are little.
Probably half of them we couldn't even say anyway because they're probably still serving, or maybe they don't want to be.
Yeah, I
brought
won't,
up on
won't
this,
bring up
so-
any other names.
Yeah. Okay. No, interesting, man. And then, so yeah, what sort of jobs are you doing for those guys? I mean,
So,
were they counter leadership at that time?
yes,
or- okay.
yeah. So even from 2008, we were into the not as highly as we was in the later years. We were still. Actually, no, we were because essentially everything was short notice to move. We'd be on short notice to move for 2 or 3 days, and then have a day off, and then, or sometimes we'd have a day off, and then back into like a 2 or 3 day rotation where we'd just be on standby to react. Basically chasing down the HVTs, high value targets, the commanders, the Taliban commanders, and if there was no intel pings and nothing was coming up, no jobs were spinning up, then we'd go out and make our own jobs and do our own sort of short patrols.
Look for trouble.
Basically.
Again, that's that. I don't know. Some people would disagree with me, but that's that good culture, right? Like that aggressive warrior culture. You're like, let's go fucking get the bad guys because that's what we're fucking here for.
Yeah, that's it.
I like that. Which then some people don't like that.
Yeah,
nowadays.
Yeah,
Now, there's no need for the warriors apparently, but
you just got to switch them off. There's a switch apparently.
Yeah, you just turn them off. Yeah. All right. Yeah. No, I like that they. I love that SF mentality where you just go and get it done. Like you know the intent.
Yeah.
Let's not worry so much about the how. Let's just go and fucking do it. Right?
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, awesome, man.
Yeah. So that was pretty good. We'd go out. I do know that, like with all the guys that we deployed, the IRR guys that we deployed with, and especially the ones. Dog handlers always got used. The EOD techs, the bomb techs always got used. The EOR techs, which were the level down from the EOD techs. So the guys, explosive ordnance reconnaissance technician. They're basically the 2IC for the EOD tech. Us three would always be on patrols, excuse me, and heading out. Whereas then, unfortunately, a lot of the team would have to rotate in and out, usually just due to bums on seats, available seats and things like that. So there was a little bit of boredom for some of the guys who didn't get to go out all that much, whereas myself as a doggy was essentially out every patrol.
Awesome, man.
Yeah.
And what was the tempo like? Not the tempo, but what were the type of jobs like? I mean, were you landing on targets, or were you landing off target, walking in at night, or were you heavy close quarters gunfire? What was going on?
Well, with the SASR, was essentially landing on target within a few hundred metres, all the cardinal points, rolling in, securing. They'd secure, I'd hang back with the headquarters element, and then once it was secured, I'd go in and search the compound. They'd have everybody rounded up, and they'd be either enrolling them, or like taking DNA or taking fingerprints, which was part of my job as well as the engineer. If they identified them, then they'd be bagged up, handcuffed, and ready for extraction. Otherwise, there wasn't always that opportunity, so sometimes we would, or the terrain didn't allow it, so we would land a little bit further away and have to walk in a little bit. But for the most part, with the SASR, it was much closer. There'd be some gunfights. Most of the people we were rolling in on did have their security forces, like the Taliban commanders. So there was usually, for the most part, a gunfight of some sort on each of those. So pretty much almost every other day there was a little bit of gunfire exchange. Nothing significant for the first sort of short period, but then we got an opportunity to head up to Kazurizgan. There was someone that we were chasing up there, one of the Taliban commanders. So we managed to get a lift on one of the Chinooks up there, landed, and then unfortunately got the word that the guy that we were chasing had moved out of area. But we couldn't get a lift home for like 4 or 5 days or something like that. So the Kazurizgan was the area. Anaconda was the operating base there, forward operating base, which was run by the US Special Forces, the Green Berets up there. They'd been hit fairly hard recently, so their numbers were down, and they weren't able to get out and patrol and do their normal stuff. So they were very happy to see us. Our guide moved out of the area, so we decided, the troopers there decided to do some patrols with them, to enable them to get out and do some work as well.
Nice.
Yeah, so
That's good.
it was good. And this is actually like the prelude, I guess, to when I lost. I'll sort of bring it up now. So this is when in 2008, 2nd of September, is when I lost my dog in Afghanistan for 14 months.
Yes.
So for like people that don't know that story, Sarbi was my dog on that deployment. And it was just an unfortunate turn of events that sort of eventuated into that, where we'd gone out with the Green Berets. We did a bit of a patrol. We'd had a fair bit of success with Taliban that had come in and tried to hit us, and we got them instead of them getting us. So we sort of had that success. We did a few other patrols, did some key leadership engagements as well, enabled the Green Berets to get out, let everyone know they were still there. They hadn't been decimated too badly. And then, we decided to do another similar patrol a couple of days later, where we were going out into a valley area. We would send the snipers out early. They take up their positions in the mountains, a bit of overwatch. We would come through in the Humvees. We had 5 Humvees, the American Humvees. First and last vehicle was the Afghan security forces, or the ANA. No ANA, it was an Afghan security force, so not the police, but one of their security forces. And the 3 middle vehicles was the American Humvees, which had a bunch of Aussie SAS and EOD tech, and myself as the dog handler. Unfortunately, we had a pretty good success. We rolled in a few Taliban, or like a dozen or so, tried to come and get us from a few different angles. The snipers took out a bunch, and that stopped them for the most part. I think it just rolled them up a bit, though, knowing that we're in there bloody taking care of business. Unfortunately, the way that we were supposed to come out had a bit of a rock slide, and the road was blocked off. So essentially, we had to come out the same way that we went in, which is never a great idea.
Not ideal, yeah.
Yeah, not ideal. So got to the turnaround point. Some of the snipers came back down, rejoined the vehicles. We started making our way out when they managed to amass a fairly large force of Taliban fighters behind us. Estimates are put at about 200 Taliban fighters. We were in a fairly active area, I guess, for Taliban. Unfortunately, we'd come out a bit, gone down into a bit of a desert area. We had a bit of a green zone down to our left, had the mountains up to our right, and we were just turning right to travel out. Had a little bit of chatter on the radios, so we decided to stay off the roads, which made the going pretty slow. And that's pretty much when it all kicked off. When the Taliban jump on their radios and they talk it up quite a lot. If they say they've got 10 fighters, they've probably got 1.
We've got the big thing. We're going to do the big thing now.
Yeah, essentially that was it. But it was a little bit different this time. Normally they do all their smack talk and we go, whatever. They just talk it up and don't do anything. But this time, they started talking, and their Taliban commander told them to shut up. So they didn't want to bloody telegraph that they were going to do something this time. And I think that happened like 2 or 3 times. So we're sort of looking at each other, going, "Oh shit, that's a little bit different. I think we might be on here." So bloody helmets on, bloody put my go fast glasses on, and actually I put my Peltors on as well, my hearing protection.
Yeah. So
getting ready for it. And we went wrong. Bloody within another minute or two, they can't remember if it was a mortar or an RPG, but they launched there was the the initiating and then the landing explosions. I think it was mortars, I'm not sure. But yeah, they fired a couple of mortars or RPGs from a compound which landed fairly close to us. We basically just manoeuvred, got in position. Basically, all the Aussies were in the tray backs of the Humvees. Most of them had 50 cals mounted to the roof and a M23, no, whatever the American Mag 58 equivalent is, like the 7.62 machine gun.
Oh, M240, I think.
M240.
Yeah.
So they had them mounted on the back, 50 cal on the roof. I think one of them had a Mark 19 grenade launcher mounted on the roof as well. Very effective piece of kit. And basically, all the Aussies were sitting in the tray backs, very, very exposed. So we all jumped on the offside of where the gunfire was coming from, returned fire. And then one of the Americans that was manning one of the 50 cals was shot in the hand. And it only took a short time to realise that we're getting fired at from the mountain as well, from our right-hand side. So basically, fire coming in from the left, fire coming in from the right as well. Didn't leave very much space to hide or take cover. The boys, returned fire for a bit, called in some 500-pound bombs on the compound that had initiated the contact. Eventually, we managed to get rolling. The bombs came, almost forgot about the bombs, started rolling. Yeah, that compound was basically levelled. Didn't get any more fire for there, so that was effective. And essentially, what ensued after that was, I think it was about 5 or 6 hours of us extracting in a rolling ambush. Couldn't get on the road because the IED threat was still there, and we're getting a lot of fire from the green zone just on the other side of the road, and we're getting a fair bit of fire from the right-hand side up in the mountains as well. So we weren't just going to sit in the trays of the vehicles, so we would basically just running beside the vehicles, switching sides depending on which side had the least amount of fire coming in, which was fairly epic, to be honest. It's never during that time did I have any fear or hesitation. I think that was probably the most I'd ever been tested in combat. All the other sort of experiences before that were medium to long range sort of combats or battles or fights, whereas this was quite a bit closer and more direct. So yeah, essentially just running and gunning, returning fire. I was never able to identify an individual fighter. They were too well hidden, but I could see muzzle flashes. So I essentially just returned fire into the muzzle flashes. A bunch of times they didn't return fire after that, so we couldn't do any BDAs, so battle damage assessments. So I don't know if I got them or if they just kept their heads down after that, or if they had jumped up and moved forward
move position
to bloody roll on with the ambush once moved up again. So
we're going to claim that you did.
Yeah.
We're going to claim you got them.
I'll take it.
We're going to say you got them.
Yeah. So yeah, that was pretty intense, and we started to take casualties. Apart from the US fella that got shot in the hand, we started to take casualties as well. So we had, I think it was 11. It's either 11 or 13 SAS. Fellas there, myself and the EOD tech, so 13 I think all up in the back of the utes or running at that time. And by the end of it, I'm going to keep this reasonably short because this story alone could go for 2 hours.
Right, yeah.
But essentially by the end of it we had 11 of us were shot, fragged, or shot and fragged, so 11 out of 13 were wounded. Including you? Including myself, yeah. So I took shrapnel twice. One was when we were in a bit of a triangle shape at the back of the Humvee. We were getting fire from both sides. So there was guys on the left, me and a couple of others on the right. We were all getting fired on, so we all came back around to the back of the vehicle and met each other there and couldn't go back to the side, so it was in a bit of a triangle behind the vehicle. And an RPG came in and landed about, I want to say a couple of metres to our rear.
Shit, okay.
Yeah, and that fragged myself. I got a bit of frag behind my left knee. 2 or 3 of the guys were knocked over. Took a fair bit of frag in their backs. I helped one of them up. I was still on my feet at the time, so I helped one of them up. But that was actually fairly significant in the Sarbi story because that's a bit of shrapnel severed the lead that had Sarbi attached to my body armour.
Shit, okay.
Yeah, so she was actually loose from me from that time on. And that was probably about an hour into the contact, into the battle. So, yeah. Oh, and she whimpered or made a bit of a noise when that went off as well, so she might have taken a little bit of frag as well. I'll talk about that later. So, yeah, she was loose from that point in time. She ran away from the Humvee down towards the road a bit, mainly because 50 cal and Mag 58 were going, or the M240 were going off the back there, very loud guns. And so we kept rolling. I couldn't get down to her. I couldn't cross the open ground to get down to her. But I could see that she was paralleling our vehicle. So as we were rolling on, she was keeping pace. And she wasn't being targeted as well. So there was no dust kicking up around her or anything like that. So I thought it best to leave her there and just keep rolling. So basically just kept rolling like that, swapping sides for quite a while. Coming up to maybe 3 hours or so into it, I was on the right-hand side of the Humvee. There was a guy in front of me, and we took a burst of machine gun fire from the right. He was hit. I think he might have been hitting the calf earlier, or he was hitting the calf then. Took a round in his buttocks as well. And a round in his injection port in his rifle, which he actually had up to his face, taking like a sight picture.
And who was this? Was this a Perth guy?
Yep, one of the Perth fellas.
Is this Troy Simmons?
It is, yes.
Okay. Yeah. I'm pretty sure. Is this the same engagement where Mark Donaldson?
Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Got his VC. Oh,
Yep,
there you go.
yep.
Jesus, so it sounds like a pretty significant event. Yes.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. So Troy, took a couple of rounds. Took a round in his ejection port. That knocked his gun out of his hand. He hit the deck. I hit the deck as well. I thought I'd just gone to ground, but later on they found a bullet or part of the projectile in my pocket. So I'd been hit by a ricochet in the hip.
Shit.
So yeah, the round had hit, the lead inner had separated, and the brass is what hit me. The brass outer casing of the round had hit me. Didn't penetrate, but made a massive 10 centimetre wide bruise on my hip. And that's probably what knocked me over. I thought I was a highly skilled operator going to ground. Just got knocked over. And the bloody round fell in my pocket afterwards.
Wow.
So yeah, I went to ground, returned fire. Once again, they didn't return fire after that. So they either just kept down or got him or whatever. I'll take it.
Definitely got him.
Crawled backwards a bit after that to join back up with Troy. Found his weapon on the ground, grabbed that, kept crawling backwards. He had managed to crawl under the back of the Humvee, passed his weapon over to him, and basically got up and kept going. He managed to move. Oh, the vehicle started moving while he was still under it, and he just grabbed a hold of the axle and got dragged a little bit. I was yelling out to the driver to stop. They stopped. Troy got back up and managed to then jump onto the in between the bull bar and the front of the vehicle, and that's where he rode out the rest of the contact with a bloody winch rope wrapped around his head as a protection for any rounds coming that way.
Jesus.
Yeah. So yeah, I rejoined the fight, kept going for a bit, been running and gunning for another hour or so. Getting a little bit tired by that time. The bloody starting to run out of adrenaline, as you do. And I was, so at that stage as well, getting pretty tired. Thought I'd jump back onto the Humvee and take up the M240 on the back there. As I was climbing up, I had my right hand, I can't remember, had one leg up, ready to climb up, and then two RPGs came in and hit just below the back of the vehicle, basically just lifted me up and threw me off the back as I was climbing up. Took a shitload of shrapnel to my face, all the way down the left-hand side there. It's cleared up quite well now. But you see on my arm there, there's quite a lot of scarring. Yeah. So a lot of shrapnel into the arm, my left side, my right inner thigh, left leg, arm as well, because arm was up. That blew me off the back of the vehicle, and I think I was unconscious for a short period, maybe 5 seconds or something like that, because by the time I'd sort of come to that classic sort of scene in like the war movies that they do with the ringing in your ears and the blurred vision sort of thing, sort of started coming to. And that's when Mark Donaldson actually came through and picked up the Terp, because the Terp was in the back of that vehicle as well.
Yeah.
So the Terp took a fair bit of frag to the face as well. He rolled out of the vehicle probably about the time where I was coming to. And, yeah, Mark Donaldson legs it past me. He goes, "Come on, Simo, let's go." So, all right. But then, he goes and grabs the Terp and takes him to safety, which is part of the reason he was awarded his VC. Whereas I just get a slap on the back and keep going, mate. No, it's all right. But yeah, by that time, though, the vehicle in front was too far ahead. The vehicle behind was too far away to go that way, and which really only left classic army training, bloody turn into the fight and bloody go that way. So I fucking turned towards the road and the enemy and ran that way. I did a bit of a ditch beside the road, probably about 20 metres away. And yeah, just ran down there, jumped in the hole, and tried to catch my breath, basically. Whew, that's pretty epic.
Yeah. Yeah, there you go, man.
Drink break.
And what's that like? I don't know how many times you've told that story. What's it like recounting that story?
That part isn't too bad for me. It's probably later on when I'm more talking about Sarbi and not being able to recover her, which sort of brings up more emotions.
Yeah.
Like for the warfighter stuff, I'm kind of okay with that for the most part. But it's other things that weigh more heavily on me as opposed to the warfighting.
Yeah.
So things like, for example, when I jumped into that ditch, the boys behind me could see they were targeting me. There was rounds kicking up all around the hole that I was in. So they didn't call out to me, or they didn't yell out or anything like that. I just kept my head down. They arced up with the 50 cal, the M240 over the top, tried to give me covering fire. That was the last time that I saw Sarbi as well. So this is what more brings emotion to me than warfighting. In that she got to within about 5 metres. She saw me, and I called out to her, and she came to me. But she got within about 5 metres, and then unfortunately the boys arced up over the top again with the 50 cal, and she wasn't having a bar of that, so she sort of ran forward again as opposed to coming to me. Second last vehicle in the convoy, which was the last American vehicle, was coming past at the time, about 20 metres further up the hill. And that was the decision I had to make then, was instead of going towards the dog and grabbing her, I had to make my way back up to the vehicle. So, yeah, taking fire, ran back to the vehicle, and jumped back on to join the convoy. At about that time, everyone was starting to mount up again. After about 4 or 5 hours of running and gunning, everyone was getting a bit tired.
Yep.
So I jumped on that vehicle, and at that time we had our max casualties. So the 11 out of 13 people were wounded. One of the boys had been shot through both legs, so he was on a stretcher on that vehicle. So I essentially got up there, sat facing the back of the vehicle. There was guys on the left, guys on the right, shooting. One of the other guys came up, jumped up. He basically just sat on my lap as well, and he was taking care of the left-hand side or the right-hand side as we're travelling forward. I handed my weapon over to him because I couldn't fire from where I was, and I was basically just trying to keep the guy behind me awake so that he wouldn't pass out. And as we rolled on from there for a little while, we were getting quite close to getting out of the contact, and one of the boys said that they saw Sarbi, and I didn't see her at that time, but I was calling out to her to try and get her to keep coming and join us. Like we had, like I said, 11 wounded Aussies, quite severely, some of them as well. I saw one of the other lads get shot in the side as well. I was looking back at the time, and when you got a bit of hot brass down your body armour, you sort of reach under there looking for it. I saw him do the same, except that he'd taken an actual round through the side. and it travelled through his body, and he thought he must have just got a bit of hot brass. It looked like he thought he had a bit of hot brass down his shirt.
Sort of thing.
Yeah. So saw him get hit as well, and we finally made it out of there. I knew the injuries and the wounds that were there, so I didn't stop to like get the dog, and that's one of the things that weighs extremely heavily on me. Good news story though, folks. 14 months later, Sarbi was found. I'll fast forward through that section. 14 months later, Sarbi was found, and she actually made it back home after 6 months in quarantine and a whole bunch of other months in TK waiting for clearance. So, yeah, tough times, but we got her back.
Yeah, mate, that's. I'm glad that obviously you did get her back, and then we'll pause for a break in a minute too. I just want to get this last little sort of bit. So did you end up seeing Sarbi again when she was recovered?
Yeah.
Years later?
Yep.
Years later, 14 months later?
14 months later. Yeah, when we got evac'd, I went back to TK. I was in hospital for about 10 days, a couple of operations to get all the shrapnel out. And that when I got out of the TK hospital, I flew back up to Kazakhstan, like full of stitches and everything, to head up there because there was word that she'd actually been seen up there. And the lads, the SAS boys that were still there, they'd hung out some of my clothes on the barbed wire exterior fences so that she would smell them and come in.
Smart.
Yeah, but unfortunately she'd been captured by the Taliban commander up there, and he was just keeping her as a trophy, basically. But 14 months later, she was found. She was returned to Tarankout, which is 2009, and then I deployed again in 2010. So I actually saw her as I was ripping in again for my next deployment.
Wow, man.
Yeah.
What was her treatment like during that time with the Taliban commander? I mean,
she was fat, so she was well fed. So she was either bloody eating their chickens or getting into their bloody naan bread hut and eating all the bread or something. But she was given to his wives to look after in their different wives' compounds. So there'd be kids there, the wives, and so they looked like they were feeding her well. Don't know about the treatment, but when I saw her again, I couldn't see any adverse psychological effects on her. She seemed quite okay.
Yeah, good. I think that'd probably be your biggest indicator too, is her behaviour, you know? Like you reach out the pattern, she doesn't flinch sort of thing. So
yeah, no, she was still good in all those aspects.
Yeah. And last little question before we have a bit of a break, man. So in that 14 months while you're waiting to, or maybe not even waiting, maybe thought, fuck, she's gone.
Yeah.
What's sort of going through your head? Like, what's life like for you?
Well,
move on or get over it?
It was hard though, because like when I said earlier, when after I got out of hospital, I went back up there because we knew she was still in the area. And then while I was up there, we got the intel that the Taliban commander in the area had captured her. So we knew she was alive. But following that, a couple of months later, when I'd finished my rotation and went home, I'd maintained comms with the Green Beret fellas up there. And, they'd say, oh, yeah, she's here. Oh, no, we've heard that she's been killed. So it was a bloody rollercoaster ride, mate.
Jesus.
Thinking that she was dead, thinking that she was been moved for like 14 months, basically. Getting an update every now and then. But, shortly before my next deployment over, got the word that she'd been found, and they had to do like scan and microchip to confirm, but they were 99% sure it was her. Yeah.
And Sarbi was a black lab, golden lab?
Yeah, black lab cross Newfoundland. So fairly big dog. Was it like 36 kilos or something like that?
So not the sort of dog you'd find in Afghanistan.
No,
like a big Afghan wolfhound looking mixed thing.
Fairly different from most of the dogs over there. They've got their big like herd dogs. I did see a Shih Tzu over there, funnily enough. Funny story. There's bloody Shih Tzu running around. But
like in the green zone sort of thing?
Yeah, just in one of the compounds.
Oh, shit.
Okay. That was quite novel. But yeah, mostly, very different from the normal dogs that you see over there. So when she was recovered, the Green Berets were just doing a hit on a compound, and they did their hit, not knowing she was there. Obviously, it was a Taliban commander's one of the compounds, so it was a known compound. He might have been there or something. They did a hit. and found the dog there. Recognised it because they do much longer rotations, and they'd pass the info on to the other guys.
Fucking hell, that is a long rotation.
Yeah, yeah. And lo and behold, she responded to English commands, and it was her.
Wow, interesting.
Yeah.
Is there any like helmet cam footage from that raid or anything? Or?
Not that I'm aware of, no.
Okay, that'd make for a great little movie.
Yeah, it would.
Easy. All right, dude, mate. Let's have a quick break, bro.
Sounds good.
The listeners of the podcast won't notice, but we'll take a break and we'll come back. Thanks, guys. Alrighty, guys, we are back. Dave and I just had a quick toilet and lunch break. Oh, minus the lunch.
We just basically went for a piss.
And we're back. So, alrighty, dude. We left off. You wrapped up a pretty intense story about Sarbi. It's the same incident where Mark Donaldson's got his Victoria Cross. You've got Troy Simmons that people know who's been shot, and you're injured. All sorts of stuff. And now you're on to your next deployment, 2009. So take it away, my man.
Yeah. So 2009 was back at home. So tempo didn't slow down at all. So as soon as I got back home, I was basically on Tag East again. For about 5 or 6 months, and then for the rest of actually no, that's a lie. 2009, I got posted up to Townsville. So the call there was that I needed to do some forces time, regular army time, because I wasn't like you say, we didn't have a selection course. I wasn't then purely special operations. We were just basically in that unit which supported special operations. So I had to go do my land forces training time, or land forces time. I was supposed to do 3 years in Townsville, but I did a couple of promotion courses, and then about 6 months into the posting, I received the phone call and said, hey, we need you on a deployment, you want to come back? So I said, yes, most definitely.
Please.
So not to say that Townsville was bad or the unit was bad or anything like that, but I definitely enjoyed SOCOM and that aspect of life. So,
So just a super quick question to cut you off. So after that trip, you've just been fucked up in this ambush and the crazy stuff's going on with, doing raids with SASR. And was there any hesitation deciding to go back overseas? Or are you just like, no, fucking send me?
No hesitation at all.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome.
I'd reteamed with another dog, did that training. Yeah, it was just then doing promotion courses in Townsville. Met my now wife in Townsville as well. Awesome. So got some good value out of Townsville. That's great. And I had no hesitation in deploying again. Like I was saying earlier, the war fighting pretty much isn't an issue for me. And we'll get into what is an issue for me and what has caused some of my anxiety and PTSD. Well, to a certain degree, it probably has added to it as well, but there are more major elements in that sense. But so finished 09, went back to Sydney and SOA, and then basically just started pre-deployment training in 2010 for the next deployment, which was SOTG 12. So the previous one was SOTG 7, and then 2010 was SOTG 12. A lot of the guys following on, which are aware of the deployments and what was happening in those periods, will probably have a good idea of what that means. But This deployment, I was attached or supporting the commandos. I had another guy with me, so we'd basically have a platoon each, and then one of our other lads was looking after the SASR on that rotation. A little bit different to the previous deployments in that we weren't doing that short reaction notice to move, Taliban hunting or style of deployments, where it was more longer patrols, more area denial sort of stuff. Still looking for the Taliban, obviously, and engaging with them if they were there, but more about getting out to the areas, and a little bit different to Forces Command or Land Command, whatever they call it, where they would basically have their patrol bases and then be limited to that sort of area. We'd have a greater area, and it would be based off intel as well, but more of the longer-term patrols. Actually, one of them there was the Shawali Kot offensive in 2010, so I was on the ground for 5 days, which is basically the length of that there. And that was fairly intense. Quite a lot of gunfights during that 5 days on the ground. Quite a few times there where I could have died. Like, I'd be in a position, I'd get up and move, look back, and then that position would be getting peppered by rounds. If I hadn't moved, I probably would have taken a few. There was one time where we'd finished part of the patrol. We're just doing a bit of a key leadership exchange. We're talking to some of the leaders from the area. I was in a position. They'd come through and attacked us. I moved a short distance, took up a new position, and then once again looked over, and that bit of ground was being peppered by rounds. So very fortunate in those aspects. It was actually the end of that 5 days on the ground when Ben Robert Smith and the SAS boys landed their chopper and got into a shit fight when he was awarded his VC as well. So we'd been on the ground fighting for that 5 days. We were in a position, and they were essentially amassing a bunch of Taliban to come and hit us. The SAS, working off their intel, identified like whoever they were chasing in that area as well, not knowing that they'd amassed a significant force to actually hit us. So they landed in a bloody hornet's nest, essentially. So, the Shawali Kot offensive, I believe there was an award for that as well. For
the meritorious unit citation.
Yeah, meritorious unit citation. So I received that. Actually, no. Oh, yeah, I did receive that, though there was another award we didn't get because even though we were on the ground, we weren't infantry. So, guys, I was there. No, it doesn't matter. Didn't get that one. But, so that was a pretty intense few days on the ground. More war fighting, and all that sort of stuff. But unfortunately, a few days or a little while after that, we had 4 helicopters up and we were heading out back into the same sort of area. And this is actually when one of the helicopters crashed. So we were hooking along at like 200 k's an hour when one of the helicopters just dropped out of the air. I don't even know now if they still know exactly what happened to it. It didn't get hit by a rocket or anything like that. It would have been some sort of mechanical or electrical failure that dropped that helicopter, and unfortunately we lost 3 of the commandos during that crash. So 2 of the choppers, and I sort of feel I have mixed emotions about that because I was on one chopper, we had an EOD tech on another chopper, and I think it was either an engineer search or EOR tech on another chopper. But the chopper that crashed didn't have any engineers on it. So whilst I feel gratitude or thankfulness that none of my boys that I intimately know went down, we did lose obviously the 3 commandos and the US pilot in that crash as well. So yeah, two of the other birds landed and they started rendering first aid and pulling the guys out of the choppers. My chopper stayed up a little bit in Overwatch, and then a couple of minutes later we landed as well. So we ran over and the guys were helping to get the guys out of the helicopter, and unfortunately, the pilot that died in the crash, his body wasn't able to be pulled out. He was just too wedged in there, and unfortunately that chopper went up in flames. There was like rounds cooking off as the boys were getting the lads out of there as well. So that was pretty tough. That more than like the war fighting weighs on me, in that I see it as a needless loss of life. And I think in 2010, that was probably around the time, like 3rd deployment in Afghanistan, around the time where I sort of started thinking, what the fuck are we doing here? Why are we doing this? Admittedly, we were still having good effect. We were still fighting the war. We were still trying to clear out the Taliban so that the Afghanis could go about and live their normal life, or live their life. When I say normal, they've basically been in combat for thousands of years of any type. They've got that style of lifestyle where the immediate family is their focus. They'll fight with the other families, and then they'll have their tribe, then they'll come together to fight the other tribes, and then like the broader areas. So they're always in that combative sort of state, whether it's a higher level or low level. So what's normal for them is subjective, I guess. But well, you see what the Taliban are doing now, which is bloody preventing girls working and women from going to work, and it's just nuts.
And there are people that are like genuinely surprised that this is happening.
Yeah. So yeah, unfortunately, I was a part of that helicopter crash there, and that was tough. Going back into base and then doing a ramp ceremony for those 3 guys and the US pilot as well. So yeah, that was a pretty tough one for me. And supporting the commandos there, they took it hard as well. Like in battle or in war and fighting, you can sort of accept a death if it's two-way sort of combat, two-way range. We're exchanging rounds, but just for a helicopter crash, it's it's not great. But we did lose another dog during that deployment as well. It was one of the MTF-1 dogs. I can't remember if that one was... that was another IED, unfortunately. So that dog and handler both died, along with another engineer searcher. That was... name eludes me.
Oh, Darren
Smith and Snowy.
Jacob Morland,
Yeah, Jacob Morland, Snowy. So, yeah, unfortunately, we lost that dog and handler, which was, starting to really rack up the dogs that had passed away or died over there. So, yeah, once again, another ramp ceremony for those guys and having to, like, as the one of the senior dog handlers there, talking to the dog handlers and trying to keep their spirits up and reassure them, whilst also fighting through my own emotional damage as well. It's pretty significant during that one. So for me, I think that is where I sort of link some of my emotional issues with, like PTSD or anxiety, when I start seeing and start experiencing people and dogs dying needlessly. So I sort of started having not a negative notion or experience of deploying, but just that niggling sort of thought where you're going, what the fuck are we doing here? Why are we doing this? Is this actually going to work? Sort of thing. And long story short, we see now that it really didn't work at all. So yeah, that does weigh fairly heavily on me.
Yeah. And how do you reconcile that? I mean, how did you reconcile that at the time?
At the time,
because you've still got 2 more deployments after this.
Yeah, exactly. So I'll talk about the reconciliation after I talk about those other 2 deployments, because the other ones add to that as well, extra layers, and for different reasons. More on the same vein as that. Like there was nothing I could have done about that, so I don't hold myself responsible for that crash. But there are other things that happen in other deployments which I do, so it sort of adds to those as well. So what was that? That was 2010. SOTG 12. So I finished up on that deployment. SOTG deployments are shorter than the land or the army deployments. So I think that was probably about 5.5 months that I was over there. So just short of Rockall. Didn't get to go on a holiday, but
Classic.
Classic.
They're like, sorry guys, 5 minutes, you would have made it.
Yep. So but the thing is though, we go hard for those 5 months.
Yep.
And then rip out, which I think is probably a good way to do it anyway, as opposed to being there for 8 months, which I was for my first deployment with regular army, where it was far less intense. The tempo was a lot slower, and you can afford to be there for a bit longer in that aspect. But basically went home and started pre-deployment training again, which then rolled on to the next year, so 2011, SOTG 16. So SOTG 16, I was supporting the SASR again, and the other 2 lads were looking after the commandos. So once again, back into the Taliban hunting role, I guess, waiting for that intel to come in, being on the ready reaction force, moving basically at a 10 minutes notice. to go and launch on any targets that
That's
ISR.
quick.
Yeah.
That's very reduced time.
10 minutes basically to get out and get to where we're getting our orders, and then probably another 20 or 30 minutes after that we're wheels up. So, yeah, within about 30, 40 minutes we're from getting told we're wheels up after someone.
That's very, very compressed.
Yeah.
Still, yeah, I mean, for people who are listening, 40 minutes, you know, like 10 minutes to throw your kit on and get to wherever, and you could be anywhere. You could be in the gym.
Yeah.
You could be in the shower. You could be taking a shit. And then there's 3 minutes gone straight away. You've got 7 left. So
Yeah. And being a doggy as well, I had to get out to the kennels, grab the dog, and then get to the briefings.
So you're sprinting. You're not like...
Pretty much.
Oh,
yeah.
I just finished my cornflakes. Yeah, fucking, I'm running.
Knock the bowl over, leg it. Take care of that for me.
Desk clear.
Yeah.
That wasn't necessary.
Yeah, go next door and tip their desk as well. I'm out!
Spitting his cornflakes. Yeah.
Basically, got extremely good, and it was all just process driven, which is very much my psyche. I'd have a process there. Like if I was wherever I was, my gear was ready to go, my body armor was good, my weapons and ammo was all bombed up, ready to go. We'd get back from a patrol and refurb everything basically, so that's pristine and ready to go again. No matter how tired you are, you would go through that to make sure your gear was good to go at a moment's notice as is required. So it was easy for me to get ready. Essentially, yeah, bang it all on, grab the dog and make it out there, and water's all stocked, food, if you're doing a 2 or 3 day, is all stocked up in your backpack, explosives, ammo, everything's all in your backpack ready to go. So yeah, that was easy in that aspect, but it does take a lot of discipline to be able to do that. But yeah, so 2011, we did actually lose one of our EDDs during that rotation. I think that one was another vehicle accident from the MTF side. I think they had a vehicle accident where another dog was run over. Unfortunately, just a training accident on base, and yeah, the dog was doing some training and it ran in the path of a vehicle and got run over again. So unfortunately, that was that. 2016, two of the dogs, two of the SASR dogs were shot on that deployment as well, I believe. So yeah, both dogs.
Oh, rotation
16.
16, yeah.
SOTG 16, yeah. Both of those dogs survived, thankfully, but doing their job, providing that early warning, like alerting the handlers and the rest of the troop to the presence of the Taliban there. So yeah, they did what they're supposed to do and survived, which was thankful. But yeah, that was another sort of those deployments where we were basically in battle every other day of some sort. Most of them weren't like as intense as the 2008 battle, but yeah, landing on compounds, chasing after Taliban commanders who generally had security forces would always or generally result in a little bit of a gunfight. Yeah, patrolling around. What else happened there? 2016, we did have an instance of one of the Afghan National Army, or ANA soldiers, a green on blue. So he turned his weapon on the Aussies in their compound and knocked up a bunch of those guys. I was on the Ready Reaction Force, so we jumped in the choppers again and chased after that guy. I think we went a short distance, found his vehicle, but he'd managed to evade us at that time. So yeah, that was hearing about that and then having to not have time really to sit back and sort of reflect on it and go and think about it, but having to actually launch and go after the guy was something a little bit different as well. There was always time afterwards to reflect on that sort of stuff, but once again, in my mind, it sort of started churning those thoughts about the needless loss of life of all the Aussies and anyone else bloody that was fighting over there as well. Sort of started to weigh pretty heavily on me. Worked a bit with the DEA, the US Drug Enforcement Agency over there as well on that deployment. So Their operators there were basically there to try and shut down the heroin or the poppy trade. But for the farmers there, they could make, pick a number out of my head, like 6 or 10 times what they could on a poppy harvest as opposed to their normal wheat and other crops. So for the farmers, they weren't necessarily pro-Taliban or thinking they were doing a bad thing. They were just growing the crop that gave them the greatest return.
They're just pro-family, pro-taking care of me.
Exactly, yeah. So, and I think a lot of the Afghanis, in that sense, are opportunistic. If a better opportunity arises for them, they will take it. It doesn't necessarily mean they're a bad person. Whether that means that they're selling their poppies and their crop to the Taliban for a greater dollar figure, or maybe not telling us where the Taliban were for that reason, because they know that if we take them out, then they're not going to get paid for their crops. Although there's heaps of different commanders and sub-commanders to step up and take their places, which is what we found a large amount of the time. Doesn't matter how many heads you cut off, and 2 more spring up, and you sometimes don't know what's going to be worse, the one below or the one you get rid of, unfortunately. But yeah, so working with the DEA was interesting. I really enjoyed that. Just seeing how different, like seeing the ODA and the Green Berets in 2008 was fantastic to see US Special Forces. Seeing the US DEA once again was interesting to see how they operate. And some people think of the US and Americans and think, oh, they're all stupid and they're all dumb and they only know how to, their army generally, they only specialise in one thing. But when you work with their special forces and the DEA, you do actually see that they've got some really good operators there as well. So it was great to work in that space as well.
So just a quick note, when you say 2016, you mean rotation 16?
Yes.
In 2012?
2011.
Oh, sorry, 2011.
16, yep.
Gotcha, yep.
Yeah. So that one, that was about it for that one. No major battles, no major well-known battles, but obviously, hang on, did I...
For the people listening, we're just going through some notes, going through Dave's notes, so Dave can recall some of the stuff from these previous deployments, because obviously multiple different deployments, hundreds of incidents between them.
Yeah, there was so much going on there. There's so many different elements.
Yeah.
So that's pretty much it for 2011 SOTG 16. I think I might have rolled 2 together. And did I talk separately about 2010 and SOTG 12? We did.
I think you did, yeah.
Yep.
Working with commandos, then back to SASR.
Yep.
And then your 2013 deployment. Who was that with?
Yeah, so finished up on SOTG 16 in 2011. Had a year break there, so 2012 was back home, but once again, high tempo, so I was on TAG East for 4 or 5 months and then pre-deployment training for 6 months again, so no real rest there. So if anyone hasn't picked up, because we're talking about 2013 now for the next deployment, I did 5 deployments to Afghanistan in 7 years, as well as the other 2 deployments spread out over about a similar sort of time frame there as well. Yeah, so... And then, unfortunately, with SOCOM, you don't really get a break. You don't get 12 months off or 2 years off while you're rotating through the ready units and things like that. It's pretty much just, all right, you're back, TAG East, all right, you're deploying again, bloody pre-deployment training, off you go. So that, brings us up to 2013, which was my last deployment, which was SOTG 19, which I'm pretty sure was the second last SOTG. I think they only went to SOGT 20.
Pretty sure, I think 20 was maybe Bravo Company, and then I think 21 was Charlie Company, and it was a bit of a half.
Oh, okay, yeah.
I think I'm just I'm purely thinking 2 Commando, by the way, not SASR and SOA.
Yeah, so SOTG 19 in 2013, I was with the Commandos again. So looking after those lads with the dog, doing all the detection stuff. I do remember, and this is where some of the things that I spoke about that started to weigh on me a little bit, in some of the things where I questioned whether I could have done things better, or if I had done things differently, there might have been a different outcome. And what I'm talking about there is we're out on the ground on a 5-day patrol, and pretty much everyone was running out of water. It was stinking hot. Everyone was running out of water, out of food, and quite fatigued after being in extreme heat and doing that. And essentially, we had one of the platoons pass through a creek line. I was walking with the headquarters element, so I walked through with them, and we had our what do they call it? Our devices to prevent radios, remote initiated devices.
Yeah, I talked about it on a previous one. EFP, EFC, fuck.
Whatever it is. Devices which stop radio frequencies getting through from remote activated devices. ECM, that's it. So we had our little personal ones which gave us about a 20 to 30 metre bubble around us, which would prevent anything from being detonated in our immediate vicinity. About 40 metres behind me was a ANA soldier and an American Terp, and they didn't have any ECM. So we'd already had a whole platoon walk through this creek line, and myself with the headquarters element, and then 40 metres behind me, these guys were passing through, and an IED detonated. I grabbed my dog and searched back a clear path to them so anyone else, the other responders, could get back there. But by the time I got to them, they'd both passed away. That's one of the things where I beat myself up a fair bit, where I sort of say, like, my dog wasn't searching at the time, we were just patrolling. And I sort of beat myself up and say, if my dog was better, or if I was better, or if I was searching through this creek line, I should have identified it as a choke point, that I might have found that device. So that is something that does weigh heavily on me. But yeah, I had some really good chats with my psych about that, talking about that sort of stuff, and I do feel better about it. But whenever I do think about it, and if I'm in a bad space, then that'll weigh heavily on me again. But yeah, unfortunately, both those guys didn't make it.
What's the conclusion you came to then with your psych, where you've been able to process that a bit better?
When I first went to my psych, they asked me, did I want to forget all of these things, or do I want to work on their meaning of these activities and events and things which affect me? I said I didn't want to forget them, because that would diminish what we were all doing over there, and it would take away our reason for doing everything that we did. So I wanted to work on accepting these things that had happened to me. So essentially, just through different techniques, talk techniques and strategies, and psychological methods, I remember the events, but just using techniques to minimise, or to sort of put it into more perspective. It's a little bit hard to sort of put into words. Sort of thing, where
without having like an hour-long therapy sort of session about what
exactly.
it all means. Yeah.
So essentially, I accept that it happened, and I accept that there was nothing that I could have done. It was just something that happened, and I just happened to be there and took part in it. It was a part of it, I should say. So but it's an ongoing thing. It's something that will probably be for me for some time, and affects me a fair bit. But it all sort of adds up in that way, I guess.
Yeah. And I think that's what a lot of people don't maybe understand about PTSD, or even any sort of mental health condition. Sometimes it's one incident, maybe. Car crash, divorce, for me, for example. Or it could be an accumulation of lots of things over many, many years, and it's just the body and the mind's natural response to trauma.
Yeah.
Whether we sit here right now and go, oh, I didn't think that was traumatic. I was okay with the combat.
Yeah.
But your mind and your subconscious and your body, your adrenal system, your central nervous system has
Yeah.
a different story. It
Yeah.
goes, no, this is. I'm affected by this,
Yeah, actually, I'll probably retract that statement where I said I was okay with the combat and the war fighting. That would have weighed heavily as well at the time. I didn't see any issue with it, but now reflecting, like you say, it all adds up, all those elements, and what you just said there about the body's ability, or when you're experiencing a trauma or adrenaline sort of event like that, your body is doing different things, and your mind is recording that, basically your memory, as a traumatic experience. Whether you're affected immediately by it then or later is a different thing, but it does all add up in different elements to how it can affect you later on. So yeah, I will retract and change my statement there a little bit.
I definitely know what you mean. And you're not like fucking combat, whatever. I'll do that right now. So you know, like I know what you mean. It was like
at the time
that wasn't like the straw, so to speak, that broke the camel's back. There was the yes, that would have the whole cup analogy.
Yeah,
maybe that was half of your cup.
Yeah,
and then the other two.
Yeah, things that I can put my finger on more succinctly that I can verbalise, I guess, into what it feels like it affects me, or what I dream of, or I used to call them dreams, but apparently they're nightmares. So what I had nightmares
fantasies.
So what I the nightmares are more based around less about the combat, but more about the things that I feel as though I should have been able to change.
Yeah.
So that's sort of like the things easiest for me to verbalise like that. But another time we were out for a couple of days, just patrolling, doing our thing, and it was only supposed to be a day patrol, but bad weather came in. We were in contact for a fair bit of the day, or a bit of the day. And then the chopper couldn't come and get us out because of the bad weather, so we just had to hold up as best we could for the night. And weather was still pretty bad, so we weren't getting arced up too much. But next day, it started clearing up. Choppers were coming in, but we were then patrolling through to where we were going to get extracted, and we were getting fair amount of gunfire from a compound. So one of the other commando platoons came in to clear that compound, so to help us extract. This is actually Cameron Baird, VC, during that.
Jesus, so you've been on the ground for 3 Victoria Cross battles.
Yeah,
amazing.
and that sort of I didn't really actually realise that until actually starting to speak with my psych and recounting the things and thinking about the things I'd been exposed to. So, yeah, that was a bit of a revelation to me in the last 12 to 18 months as well.
Yeah, big time.
But yeah, unfortunately, that platoon came in, and it's fairly well documented what happened to Cam, and like they were trying to make entry into a compound, and grenades and guns and everything going off, trying to clear, and Cam, as he was always at the front, bloody made entry, and unfortunately there was way too many guys in there for him to take care of, and he was killed, shot and killed. But they eventually were able to take over that compound, clear that out. They got evac'd, and then we got evac'd out as well. But like I said, that's the third bloody fairly significant battle where someone was awarded a VC, which I was either involved or very closely involved with as well. So
yeah, definitely.
Yeah, so yeah, like most people might think of a deployment and their deployments and go, oh yeah, there was a bunch of VCs, but to be exposed to that much as well and to see that much loss of life is another thing that weighs fairly heavily. Pretty much 26 months I spent in Afghanistan, so over the 5 deployments, so just over 2 years on the ground.
Yeah, shit.
And being a dog handler attached to SAS and commandos, the RDF on the first one, most of that was very, very active, as opposed to like some people that might have only got out on 1 or 2 patrols and shit like that. So yeah, that's me.
Awesome. And like, given that amount of time that you spent over there, do you have a particular affinity to that country? So, and what I mean is, yes, it was a significant portion of your life, But for example, when the Kabul airport thing was happening, was that one of those times when you went, okay, fuck, it was all for nothing, or was it you managed to deal with that okay? What was that like?
Yeah, I was already working with my psychiatrist and psychologist at that time, so it was okay for me I was able to talk to someone like a professional, to be able to speak about those sorts of things. And she asked exactly the same question, and sort of in the back of my mind, I knew it was always going to be the case when the US and everyone else pulled out, that they'd just roll back in, because I'd seen it before in other areas where like there'd been a patrol base, and for whatever reason, whether it was Australian or a different one, different country's patrol base was shut down temporarily, they'd just roll straight back in. And they've been doing it for hundreds of years. They've got time. They'll just wait until we go away. If that's 15 or 20 years later, they'll just come back afterwards, roll back in.
What's that saying they have? You got the watches, but we have the time.
Yeah, yeah, it's a good one. Yeah, so, it probably didn't affect me too much. It pissed me off, obviously.
Yeah.
But, psychologically, it wasn't too bad. I had someone to talk to and talk it through with, and sort of in the back of my mind, I probably knew it was going to happen anyway.
Yeah, I guess if you to a degree psychologically flexible, and the whole change acceptance thing you were talking about, you've gone, well, I have to accept what I did on my deployments, what I didn't do, what I thought I should have done, etc. And then now you've got to go, well, I've had plenty of practice doing that. I've got to now accept what's going to happen to that country, because ultimately it's out of our hands.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. Shit, interesting, man. Because, I mean, look, what pisses me off about that whole situation was, how, it was quite a poorly run operation at a tactical level, at least, like, the way it was directed from the government. Like, okay, we're leaving now, see ya, and then let's quickly get to the airport and fly out, sort of thing, and leave all this important equipment there. Yeah. Even though it was hilarious to watch the Taliban, like, crashing in helicopters. Oh, yeah. That was kind of funny. But
I'm a pilot.
No, No,
you're not. Oh, no, I'm not.
I was a pilot for a very short amount of time. And I mean, I could be totally wrong. I'm just going off what I've seen on the media, which could be a load of shit, right? But what mostly pissed me off was how people were so shocked at what the Taliban did after. Like, mate, what did you think we were there for? Like, what do you think they've been doing for so long?
Yeah, US and Australian governments engaging with them, and them saying, we'll be fine. We'll let the civilians live as they were, and then fucking 2 weeks later, all right, girls can't go to school. 2 weeks later, okay, women can't have jobs now. Yeah. What the fuck?
And they're back to raping people and all this, executing people, and all these things they were doing in the past, and then asking for aid when those earthquakes happened. I'm like... Really? I mean, come on. History repeats itself, right? And we just don't learn our lessons. That was what was frustrating for me.
Yeah,
because I didn't do the amount of deployments you did. I didn't do half the work that you did. So for me, Afghanistan was just a very short, brief part of my life.
Yeah,
like an interesting part of my story.
Yeah.
So.
To be brutally honest, 7 years of my life was totally dedicated to 100%. Going in and out of Afghanistan, which is bloody epic when you think about it in those terms. And like, I knew the 26 months that I'd spent on the ground there, and it's, I don't know, it's the sort of thing where once I'm done with something, that's probably not accurate. I probably saw it just going through time, being there, seeing the changes and seeing the things that were happening, and coming to the realisation that we shouldn't be there, or maybe we should be there, but it could be done in a different way. That by the time I left, I was pretty much done with it. Not sure how that sort of sounds or comes out, but
I think I know what you mean. Like you've done
I'd
5
accepted.
deployments worth of or a variety of things, and then gone, well,
that's all we can do.
Dave has done everything Dave can do.
Exactly. Yeah,
it's out of my hands.
Yeah, that's more succinct. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow, dude, man. So tell me, I want to, like, what's going through your head now, and like not this very moment, but I mean now in your life, post-military. I mean, 2 years ago, 18 months to 2 years, having been diagnosed with PTSD, that's not a long time.
Yeah.
Like, that's not a long time. I mean, some people might think 2 years is a long time, but, you know, I don't know, man. Someone living with PTSD, is it a long time? Have you...
I didn't recognise that I had any issues for some time, but through discussions and talk and everything like that with my psychs, there was probably signs there from about 2010, like coming home and how I was, like you were sort of talking, asking some of those questions earlier, how I came back and how I integrated. I think I was distant when I was coming home from some of those later, or probably the mid and later deployments. Memory was a very big one for me. I started to have a lot of memory loss, short-term memory loss, whether that's from some of the explosions and things like that, and get concussed, potential traumatic brain injury for short-term memory sort of things as well. But that can all be linked to PTSD and anxiety. If I'm like over threshold with experiencing a PTSD moment or something like that, my brain isn't taking in new memories. So that could be an element of that as well. I think that's from around then I started experiencing that, not knowing it at the time. And even when I discharged in 2016, I started drinking quite heavily, getting into drinking and way in excess, even though we did it in the army, to be honest, anyway.
Yeah.
But it was affecting my home life. It was affecting my work, the ability to do things that I would normally do, and add on to that all the physical injuries as well. We didn't really go into it during there, but over 21 years in the army, knees, ankles, hips, shoulders, elbows, and the big ones from getting blown off vehicles and things, like back and neck. That was weighing on me heavily as well. Basically being in constant pain for 15 years is very hard to deal with.
Yeah.
So yeah, discharged 2016, over consuming alcohol. That was for a couple of years as well before I started to get a bit of a handle on that. So that was only about, 3 or 4 years ago that it's probably 3 years or so that I was drinking too much in excess and like drinking to blackout, basically.
Yeah, shit.
So not then remembering the whole night.
Is this like at home or when you're out on the piss with your mates?
Yeah, out on the piss.
Getting into fights, that type of stuff, or just...
No, I was never a fighter on the piss, thankfully. So, because I hate to fight, funnily enough. I don't like getting punched.
Yeah, no, I'm the same.
Maybe that might make me a better fighter. I don't want to get punched. But, and then a couple of years ago, then starting the psych, or starting to realise that things weren't as they should be. Anxiety levels, not enjoying the things I used to, not wanting to go out in public, still not some of those things as well. Like I don't like going to the shops, shopping centres where there's too many people. The Channel 7 chopper doesn't set me off, but, things like that. But other elements do. So yeah, recognising it is the first step. Elements of PTSD, and then for fucking years, man, I'd always said, no, I'm fine. This is while I was still serving as well. If I ever recognise that I have an issue, I'll go and get help. I probably went and got help 5 or 6 years later than what I should have. So I think that's a huge sort of, for anybody out there listening, even if you have like an inkling, or if someone has said to you that maybe you might need to go and see someone, go and have a chat with a professional, just bloody do it. Otherwise, you could go too long without getting help. And then you might actually not be able to get help if you've taken your own life, for example, if it weighs on you that much that you've taken your own life, and then that doesn't help anybody. That gets you out of it, but your family, friends and loved ones are going to have to deal with that for the rest of their lives. So go and get help as soon as you have an inkling.
Yeah. So what do you think worked best for you? Was it like Was the psych something that worked for you, or was it medication? What was the solution?
I didn't have to have medication. I didn't have depression, which is where a lot of people will get medicated. And I was a little bit scared of being medicated as well, because I didn't want to be affected by any medications that I could get or would be given. So yeah, a lot of talk therapy with my with my psychologist, and just going through and talking about all these different elements and different actions that affected me, and basically spending just over a year every couple of weeks, and now down to every month or so, of just talking through everything, talking about how it affected me and how I want it to affect me, and then just using all the different techniques and just talk strategies to get through that.
And is that so? Is the type of stuff you're doing almost like reframing your history? So looking back and
exactly, yep.
Okay, yeah. So the memory doesn't change necessarily, but you extract something different, like a different meaning from it.
Yes, yep. Spot on.
Yeah. And that's something that's happened. That's helped me massively. Like I was telling you before, making coffee. I used to view my military career in a certain way, and now I've sort of flipping the way that I look at it.
Yep.
And talking about it when I'm like a guest on a podcast like this, for example. Helps me deal with it a bit better. Yeah, it helps me realise that maybe I wasn't the big loser that I thought I was, and that I'm sort of not as good or as bad as I thought I was. It sounds like you're kind of the same, like the whole talking it over and getting it out there.
Yeah, reframing. That's exactly what it was.